Has this ever happened to you? Man, why do I have to do so much work if I want to get all my rewards in an MMORPG? I mean, I have to do so many dungeons and raids and attunements. I just want all the epics and the purples. Why do I have to work so hard to get all that? Well, now there's a way. It's called instant gratification. What do you mean? Well, if you'd shut the fuck up for 1 second, I'd tell you. Instant gratification was developed by science. It's 100% effective and designed to get you your epics without you ever having to put in any real effort into the game, whether that effort be time or difficulty or just any sort of dedication. It just gets you what you want, when you want it, right away. So you mean I could get all of my epics and my purples just by queuing up and pressing one button? What are you, fucking deaf? I just said that. Actually, that's kind of a hurtful thing to say to somebody. You shouldn't say it like that. Instant gratification is for everyone, so try it out. Jump right in and get your gratification right away, without any real work, effort, or determination required. Try it now. It's 100% safe.
Side effects may include loss of enjoyment, engagement deficiencies, dependency on shitty catch-up mechanics, erections lasting in excess of 4 hours, and death. If you experience any of these symptoms, please reevaluate while you play video games. Unless you experience death, then consult your doctor. Or a 4-hour erection, then consult your wife, girlfriend, sex worker, or pornographic website.
Thanks, instant gratification! How long do I have to hold this pose? This seems like a long time. Why am I still holding this pose? What is engagement? Well, a couple of weeks ago I talked about how the most engaging part of any MMORPG ever is arguably the community. But that's only half the picture. That's only half true. There is another piece that is what the community surrounds, what builds the community up, what the community must come together to defeat. And that is content. If engagement with the community is what keeps you playing the game, then content is what brings the community together. Content is the core. It is what the game is at its most basic level. It is what you do. It is the goals you accomplish, the monsters you defeat, the quests you go on, the reputations you improve, the raids you take down, the loot you wear. And there are a lot of different ways to set up your content. Every MMO does something different. Guild Wars focuses on community events and PvP, whereas World of Warcraft focuses more on raids and twiddling your thumbs in your garrison like a jackoff.
Seriously, Blizzard, if you bring garrisons back ever again, I'm gonna punch you right in your face.
There are many philosophies when it comes to content and how it's distributed, but some of them work much better than others. This is exemplified by two interesting pieces of news that have come out over the last couple of months. World of Warcraft, arguably one of the most accessible MMORPGs on the market, and a very casual one by modern interpretation, I guess, at least coming from where I come from, which, old crotchety douchebag, is suffering a massive bleed out of subscribers. They're down to their lowest point in almost 10 years. Meanwhile, another piece of news came out about a week ago, which sheds some interesting light into how people think. Final Fantasy XIV has announced that it has over 5 million accounts, with outside observers suggesting there may be between 800,000 and 1.2 million active subscribers. This shoves Final Fantasy XIV cleanly into the number 2 spot for MMORPGs, coming from one of the worst MMORPG launches of all time, something that can only really be classified as a clusterfuck-tastrophe. But is there a correlation here? And why am I bringing this up in a video about content? To decipher this mystery and the mystery as to why Final Fantasy is rising as Warcraft is falling, we must go back in time to another strange era. One before there were looking for raid, one long before the accessibility of looking for dungeon was even an idea in the back of a developer's mind at Blizzard Entertainment. We must go back to Wrath of the Lich King, Burning Crusade, and Vanilla World of Warcraft. To really get your head around what it meant to be a Burning Crusade level raider, you have to look at this chart. Look at this chart. Look at this shit. This is everything you needed to do to get to the top tier raids in Burning Crusade. Look at all this shit. There is a lot that needs to be done, from reputation factions to heroic dungeons to other raids. You wound up tiering through progression up to the very top. It was a lot of work, and it took a good amount of time and dedication to complete.
Makes fucking Genetic Archives of Tomb look pretty fucking easy, doesn't it?
But there's an interesting philosophy that goes on behind this chart, and it extended to Vanilla WoW, and it extended to some of Wrath of the Lich King as well. Everything on this chart funnels into a singular goal: taking down the biggest bosses, winning the best loot, getting the coolest stuff, being that badass motherfucker. Every part of this, every single bubble on this chart is a step on that path. Compared to the shit you do now, there is not nearly as much stuff to do. Now, a fantastic other gentleman actually came up with this, and I never thought of it, but it makes a shit ton of sense. And I've got a link to his channel right here, and you should check him out if you're interested in World of Warcraft, stuff like that. Everything on this list is something to do. Every time you log in, you have something to do that is relevant towards that path to the top, towards Sunwell Plateau, towards Kil'jaeden, towards Black Temple, towards Illidan, towards all of these cool things that you want to do. You always have something to do when you log in. And it's always relevant to what you want to do in the long run. There were side challenges, things you could do on the side, but most of what you were doing was contributing to that major goal at the end game. Every reputation you farm up, every item you pick up in a dungeon, every heroic you clear, every raid you complete, all contributes to that final goal of taking down the biggest bosses in the game. You don't get anywhere near that kind of engagement in this one. With this expansion, you do a couple of dungeons, you're at the item level, you're good. You fucking go in, you can complete everything in a few days. There's nowhere near the kind of engagement where every day you're logging in and seeing that you can do something that's contributing to the goal of bringing down Kil'jaeden. Even daily quests on that fucking Sunwell Isle were helping that. Were directly contributing to that goal. They weren't just a gold harvesting location. They were unlocking further bosses in Sunwell Plateau. And when you followed all those steps and you got to the end and you brought down the boss, well, there's no way I could put into words how amazing it feels. So you just have to hear it for yourself. Those are the cries of people who've been putting thousands of hours into this, working from the very beginning up to this moment. You can hear the pure elation in their voices. You don't fall apart like that so easily, especially when you've been doing this professionally for years. And yet, you can hear them. They are ecstatic. But that philosophy doesn't really exist anymore. There's no build-up. It's just walk through the door, kill the bosses, move on. And there are some uniquely and interestingly challenging encounters. And the Mythic difficulty is still a high-end challenge for high-end players. But there's no build-up anymore. You've got catch-up mechanics, which puts you right back in the raid. You've got no world outside of that raid. And none of the other features of the game funnel into it. It's not like everything you're doing is working towards this one goal. It's now that raiding is just another feature that you complete while you're playing the game. Because that's what you do in World of Warcraft now. You don't fight for what you want. You complete your features and you move on. But interestingly enough, there is a place where this philosophy does still survive, but it's not in Blizzard's hands anymore. It's held by the famously 10 years back in time company, Square Enix, and their game Final Fantasy XIV. If you look at the endgame charts for Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn, because Heavensward doesn't really have that much information out yet, you'll see something kind of familiar. There's a lot of shit to do. This is only to get into the first raid, the Binding Coil of Bahamut, Part 1. And again, we're seeing this similar trend, where everything on this list kind of boils down towards one final goal. Getting into raids and taking down the big bosses and winning. Kicking ass and taking names. That's the big goal here. And everything you're doing, from running dungeons to completing the smaller 8-man content to doing fates out in the world, helps you on this goal to get to that point. It's a real progression towards something you want to do. So when you look at it this way, there's an interesting correlation here. As World of Warcraft stepped away from the philosophy of progression and engagement, Final Fantasy took it up and are now working towards it. WildStar would have taken it up as well, but unfortunately their failure of a launch caused that to be kind of put on hold. But then again, Final Fantasy XIV also failed at launch, pretty spectacularly, and now it's second place on the chart of MMORPGs, widely considered the best MMORPG on the market by a lot of people. I would say second best still, but that's just me. This kind of thing interestingly flies in the face of the idea that the hardcore MMORPG is dead. That idea that I keep hearing that people just don't have time to do it. Despite the fact that this MMORPG is fairly hardcore, but it's still growing at the fastest rate in the industry. It flies in the face of that whole idea. This casual, sort of instant gratification Pandora's box that was opened by World of Warcraft has had a pretty staggering effect on the market as a whole. But it's not taking it down, because Square Enix forgot to move forward in time at one point. And they've managed to create an MMO that perfectly preserves the ideas of the past. Something that I've only recently come into, and am really fucking enjoying, by the way. I'm not going to talk specifics, but goddamn, that's not a bad game. These layers of progressions, working towards a final goal, working hard to get where you want to be, actually engaging against hard enemies. That's the kind of content that keeps players together, that keeps communities fighting for that grand victory, and it shows now, with Final Fantasy XIV picking up World of Warcraft Burning Crusades ideas and re-implementing them in a new shell. With all of this new stuff, with World of Warcraft's falling accessibility and casual nature slowly crippling and bleeding the game dry. There are people out there who want a hardcore experience. And there's people out there who don't want a casual walk through the door, receive your loot experience. There is a powerful drive for an MMORPG with truly difficult and engaging content that takes time, that takes effort, that takes progression to rise up through. It's because it feels so good when you do it, but it doesn't need to be all at once. You can spend 20 minutes and do a dungeon. You can spend 45 minutes and do a quest. You can spend 10 minutes and complete some crafting. But it all helps towards that one goal of being the baddest ass motherfucker and taking down that son of a bitch and making your way up and winning. And feeling that engagement of taking the boss down. And knowing that you prepared for months to do it. And it felt amazing. That's what we want. We want to feel like goddamn heroes. And when your content isn't engaging, it's not difficult, it requires no actual effort, we don't feel like goddamn heroes. We feel like we're lining up for our fucking slop soup. A world where everything is handed to you is no world worth caring about. Without drive, without determination, your victories will be hollow and Pyrrhic. This is why Final Fantasy, WildStar, these games ask the player that they show true determination, drive, and desire, not simply drop $15 a month. And they're games that, in my opinion, are going to succeed really well. Because I want to kill the biggest boss. I want to scale every turn of Alexander on Savage mode. I want to break down the datascape. But they're not going to let me walk through the door and do that. WildStar and Final Fantasy, they simply won't let me log in and take my prize. They'll take it and they'll scale it atop 100 steps. They're going to put it on a pillar so high that there is no way I can reach it alone. And then, they'll turn to me. And against the shine of everything I want to achieve, and everything they want me to take, every boss that I want to kill and every piece of loot that I want to equip, they will whisper to me, "Take it, if you can." Hey guys, thanks for watching this little video on content in World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy and how I think content should be, but that's just my opinion, of course. I hope you enjoyed this, and maybe you agree with a few things, maybe you don't. Either way, I would love to hear from you in the comments. That's what they're for, right? So long as it doesn't turn into a flame war. Thank you very much for watching again. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really helps me support the channel and keep things going and helps me get better. But thank you very much again for the third time, because I have to thank everybody 3 times, because I swear to God, it's a weird thing in my brain. And you all have a great one. No, actually, no, I read this thing again, and yes, the Genetic Archives attunement is still bullshit.